You want me to do it again?
Well, here it is. Let's go. Okay. All right, we're ready.
So, here we are. Well.
So this is the trial at Westminster Magistrates Court of the Freedom 3. It's about the right to protest. It's been going on how long, Piers?
This is the sixth and final day.
Sixth and final day. And it happens to correspond with the news of the Sue Gray reports and the Partygate scandal, as they call it. So, what's your take? What's happening?
Well, this is indeed ironic. The government knew all along that the corona threat is a nonsense, and they imposed great restrictions on our freedoms. This case goes totally to the freedom to protest in this country, and if the judge finds it against us, I'm certain there will be appeals, probably all the way to the Supreme Court. If the judge finds in our favour, the Crown prosecution might want to appeal. I don't know, but this case is going to be a landmark, whatever happens.
So what's the case concerned with? What are the protests they're dealing with?
It's about the 5 big protests that happened during 2020, namely the August the 29th, September the 26th, October the 24th, November the 28th, and December the 31st. And there's 3 of us on trial. There were originally 5. 2 have been dealt with already. Kate Cimrani and Fiona Hine have had their case, and now we have the 3. It's myself and Louise Creffield and Vincent Dumble. And we are charged, all of us are charged with the first 4 demonstrations for holding, essentially, and the last one, December the 31st, New Year's Eve, it's only me that's charged. And we are charged with failing to comply with, essentially, taking reasonable measures. We're failing to take reasonable measures to prevent spread in these events when they had been exempted from full restrictions because they're political, or holding things when we were not allowed to hold any protests, such as December the 31st was like that.
It seemed in the court that the discussion focused on risk assessments and issues like that, but it appears that the police and the authorities and the government never actually worked out what risks are from outdoor protests. And there was an implication in some of the discussions that people should be wearing masks in the open air, which was never a regulation, an instruction or anything of that sort.
Well, basically, the law means that there are 2 options that the government could have carried forward in how to deal with the supposed risk. One was they could have had a prescriptive answer and say, we're going to have this law to say, anything you do, you've got to be 2 meters apart. You can have a demonstration, but the rules you've got to do are this and this and this and this. Be very specific, and then we'd know when we go on a march what we've got to do to make it legal or not. Right. And that is the argument that the police are saying, essentially, is what the rules meant. However, the rules are very clear. They did not say that. The rules did not give a prescription, a list of everything that had to be done. What the rule said was, you can demonstrate, but to do so, if it's a political demonstration, you've got to have a risk assessment. The risk assessment is to assess the risk that's going to happen when you do demonstrate, and then you have to comply with measures to keep it safe. Now, that is the law. However, the police have acted as if that isn't the law, because they've just gone on the first route and said we haven't applied. The second route, you see, which is the Plan B, if you like, the Route B, we are under, and you see that obviously requires an assessment of whether or not what we did actually increase risk. And our failure to do things, did our failure to do something increase the risk of coronavirus being spread? And there's nowhere in this case, and I can say this now because all the closing speeches are happening, nowhere in this case that the police provided any measure, any assessment, any gauging of what supposed increased risk had happened, and if there was any increased risk.
And how could the police even think that they're qualified to make such a decision?
Precisely. The police said on many occasions, we are not qualified, we are not virologists. So there's no measures of actual increased danger, supposed, that we had. And no evidence that anything we did caused anybody to get ill or anything. In fact, if you want to argue about that, the people marching are the healthiest people around because they're not gagging themselves and re-inhaling toxins. But, you know, that hasn't even been discussed.
And actually, the number of people supposedly with or catching coronavirus now is higher than it ever was during any of those protests.
Because they've been whatever.
According to their stats.
Yeah, but you see, that is the point. There's no... If we were to have a proper thing like that, we would win that argument anyway.
Yeah.
We're healthier.
Yeah.
So that hasn't even been brought up. So you see, on the scheme of things A has not been carried out, but the police have pretended it has. Scheme of things B is the law, and the police have failed absolutely to do their duty and provide information showing how we had, if at all, increased risk.
And today Boris Johnson is reading the Sue Gray report. I know you haven't looked at that yet, but
yes, there it is.
So what was going on? Why were they having parties? What do you think the reason they were having parties was?
They were having parties because they liked having parties.
Yeah, okay.
Boris is a drunkard. No, I would say on that I support absolutely all parties. Boris should not be troubled at having a party. What should we should have him troubled by is, one, lying to Parliament, and two, introducing these stupid rules in the first place.
Yeah, quite right.
And going back to the court, there is another overarching case that we have, namely, it's a sort of safety valve argument. In a democracy, we have the right to protest, and the government has accepted that. We do have a right to protest, and it's got to be curtailed a bit because of coronavirus and so on. That's their argument. But we do have a right to protest. And the way the police have been administering against us in some days, saying absolutely no right to a mass arrest, or infringing on what was clearly reasonable and what we could do. This infringement on our right to protest weakens protest and weakens the safety valve we have under a democracy. So someone like me, my barristers argued, look, I'm just doing things which enable and help protest. If this is curtailed, the alternative is people go to anarchic disorder and big street fights, which has happened in some other countries.
Yeah, I mean, there was a debate, a little bit of a debate in the court about the issue of the other consequences of lockdowns and the restrictions on, I mean, even just accepting all the narrative about COVID, and accept everything that they said, the numbers dead, all the rest of it. If we accept all of that, still, there's a giant question about what lockdown meant and the consequences for health and mental health and all the rest of it.
Of course, the whole side issues.
And that without protest, you couldn't weigh that.
That's right.
You couldn't find expression for that.
No, we couldn't. That's exactly right. See, that is the point. This lid being placed upon us is actually wrong under all the democratic processes we have. Now, you see, Louise's case, because she's a woman that's been harassed, had a lot of trouble in the past, but crystal clear. Her reason, her personal reason for being involved in this stuff is not necessarily so much the big picture, which I talk about a lot, you know, the 6 legs of the New World tyranny and so forth. It's, you know, specifically about individual rights, women's rights, and the consequences of people in lockdown, increased suicides, increased domestic violence, all of those things. Now that is a big picture issue which is completely unaddressed by the government, and we know, as crystal clear as a fact, that increased illness and death has directly arisen from the introduction of these restrictions.
And there's a certain sense of frustration amongst some of the audience watching because of the way in which it gets narrowed down to the wording organizer or holding a demonstration. It becomes sort of questions about pedantry, almost like English dictionary definitions examined by law.
This is law. I mean, so you have to. Well, it's understandable. I mean, I understand it. There's a participation. Anybody is participating. Okay, somebody who walks into a crowd by accident is participating, probably.
Yeah.
Then we have organising. Now, organisers are people who are making. Well, I'm going to make sure there's a sound system. I'm going to produce. I'm going to make some advice that people have to where they're coming. It's practical stuff. Organising. Now, holding is not necessarily any of these things in concept, and of course we're charged with holding. Holding is, well, I could say, well, Boris, he holds these parties. He doesn't organise them.
Right.
He says to people, we're going to have, what's he calling it? What the fuck parties is
WTF. Yeah.
Wine time Friday. That's what they're called. Boris is saying, what the fuck? So he calls a what the fuck party. He says, I'm going to call a what the fuck party. That's my job. That's what I'm doing. Someone else is organising. So you see, that is what we are charged with, essentially. There is overlaps, of course, between organising and holding, but you can understand there is a difference. And of course, when I went to Sheffield, remember, when I was violently attacked and they dropped the charges because the violence was too great to then show it in court. As soon as I turned up, I was said, Mr. Corbyn, we believe you're holding a demonstration here. I said, what are you talking about? I've just turned up to speak. He said, there's a crowd here. They've come here for you. You're holding them. You're holding a demonstration. I said, well, no, I'm not. I'm just here as a speaker. Well, someone else, in my opinion, held it. They called it. They advertised it. And I came as a speaker.
Yeah.
But you see, there's all sorts of ways of interpreting holding.
So how does this madness end? You got a final summation from one of the defence, I presume.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes.
And then the judge is going to go away and
Correct,
make a decision, I believe. Is that
We've
right?
Had my Alex, superb barrister, has summarised my case. But we do rely all on each other. But the key thing he made about my presence was the rights, the safety argument. It applies to me more than the others in a way. The question of type A and type B of legality, i.e. we're on a point B type of operation in this country which has not been adhered to by the police. That applies to all of us as well.
What do you mean AB? What do you mean?
Pardon?
What do you mean AB?
The way of dealing with the issues of coronavirus supposed infection, the plan A would be the government would have introduced
I see,
very specific, and the type B is that it's up on us. It's on you can organise this, and it's on your head.
Those are the formal frameworks in which the methods they could use. Okay, and the Human Rights Act
operating on B.
Isn't that the core
Human
of the
Rights
issue?
Act is involved in all of them as to whether or not everything you do has to be balanced between the restrictions are put in to save lives or stop the infection, and that's got to be balanced against your loss of rights under Articles 10 and 11 of the Human Rights Act, 10 for speech and 11 for assembly.
And that the state and police will facilitate those things.
It's a duty of the police to facilitate your rights under Articles 10 and 11.
So one point that was made was this point that in a normal criminal process, a robber or something like that, the Human Rights Act doesn't come in. But this is fundamental to this question.
Right, yes. This is it's about public protest. The human right is automatic. Someone committing a robbery or something, well, they got rights under arrest, yes.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not about some fundamental rights which actually the police have to defend.
Go around robbing and killing.
Yeah. The police, the police can't help you to rob a place. You know what I mean? Well, I wouldn't go quite as far as that in some circumstances. Okay, Piers, anything else you want to say for now?
Yes, I would say as I repeat, the fundamental right to protest is now under judgment, and this will run and run. If we lose, in inverted commas, we will press it forward in courts of appeal at a higher level. Whatever, I would say here in advance, whatever happens, I have no regrets whatsoever about anything I've done, and I'm sure the other two people have been arrested as symbols, if you like, feel the same. And it's crystal clear, had we not done all these things, then we could easily be in martial law now. If we hadn't have stepped out on May the 16th, 2020, and the 30th of May, and then all the things that happened, we know they would have had more lockdowns, they would have had more restrictions, there would have been more deaths as a consequence of lockdowns, and our rights would be taken away, the economy would be even more smashed. So our resistance on the streets has been absolutely fundamentally crucial, and you people turning up, it's thanks to you that we have a certain amount of freedom now which you would not rather have. So press on, press on, press on. And think about the big picture. We have to grapple the big picture. We are in a picture where we have a six-legged beast called the New World Tyranny attacking us. That is what we've got to cope with as well. So resist, defy, and do not comply with their restrictions.
Thanks very much, Piers. Good luck in the court.